tea break. I'm starting where I ended at integrity, connecting integrity and conscience. I promised I'll do so, and that's what I'm going to do in this session. I'm going to take, I'm sure you've many questions written, so I'll take a session now, not very long, and then I'll be answering some questions, or we'll get into discussion. Are you ready for that? Especially out of the many things that I've said, we want to discuss them, especially how they apply in the day-to-day life. Yeah, Dean, you'll help us to, to get. So let's first of all understand this issue of conscience. So when people say conscience, what do they mean? How are we made? That is a very, very important question. And I know that in the academia, there are many approaches. I'm going to use the biblical approach to the dichotomy of man, the nature of a human being. How are we made? Are we just body and mind only? Or do we have a third part? The scripture shows us that we have three parts. And we have several scriptures. I'll quote just two of them. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 23 says, "May your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless." So it mentions the spirit, it mentions the soul, and mentions the body. Now, I'm not going to the psychology of it, but that's how the Bible presents a human being. That when we were created, God created man in his own image. The image referred to here is the spirit, this spirit here. Maybe let me first give you a second scripture that talks about the soul, the body, and the spirit. Can we read this together? This is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, just before he's arrested. Okay? Can we read together? "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Who is speaking? He said to them, "Stay here and keep watch. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." So do you see the spirit here? Do you see the body, and do you see the what? The soul. Now, there are many other scriptures in the Bible that are talking about that. Now, so when the Bible says God made man in his own image, the image referred to is the spirit. It's not the body, because look at, all of us have two eyes, one nose with two holes, two ears, and is that the image God is talking about? Certainly not physical image. It's not a physical image, because God is not a physical being. God is spirit being. So he made us in his image, that he is spirit and we are spirit. That's the difference between us and all other creation. That statement alone puts man and gives man a dignity that is different from all creation. Other animals are not created like us. They don't have a spirit. When you knock a dog, it's gone. That's it. Human beings don't die like that. The physical body is dead, but there is a part in the human being that remains alive. Do we all agree with that? Yes, there is a part of you which doesn't die like that. When your dog is knocked, it's gone. Its physical body is dead, and its mind, brain dies 5 minutes later, but it's finished. Human beings have another part, that is the spirit and the soul that leave the body. What we call physical death is not the death of your spirit. Your spirit doesn't die. Your spirit and your soul live. You are even able to see us from above. You'll see the family members crying for the next few days before you are buried. So you'll even be seeing them from above, watching and feeling sorry about them, because for you at that time, now if you're born in Wikwe, Bukunja side, if that body will be taken and buried, but you also know what will happen to that body. Those people in Bukunja may have it for dinner in any of those places. Okay? Anybody coming from Bukunja, don't put up your hand. But you know that. You know that. Have you heard of a place called Bukunja? You have heard of night dancers? Eh? What do? They are cannibals. They eat dead bodies. Therefore, I want you to know that you are not really you are not this physical body. The real you is not this physical body. The real you is the spirit and the soul. So the body is the house you live in while you are here on earth. It has a beginning, it was born, and then one day it will die, but then you'll now live eternally in the spirit and the soul. Now, irrespective of which religion, what religion you believe in, that is something that is not debatable. At least most of our religion, if not all, believe that there is life after what? Death. Now, the part I'm bringing out most is that there is a part of you which is going to live forever. You are not just this physical body. You have a part of you which is your spirit and your soul. Your soul is listening to me now. That part, the spirit and the soul, will leave your body, and that at that moment you'll be dead. They say, a food day. No go. Now, that body they are bringing is not the real you. That is the house where you've been living. So kindly remind your neighbor that you are not this body. I know you look very beautiful, but this is not the real you physically. You spend a lot of time on this body, but sometime it will start in 10, 20 years from now. You'll have all these nkanyanya. You'll fight them with the pests and what do they call it? Makeup. You try to make up to fight the wrinkles. You will fight 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and then now you started to... That body you have today will not be what it is today after 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It goes on aging, dying slowly until you actually die. But the part in you, that is called the spirit and the soul, does not age. No. It grows younger, if anything. So is the mind. Your spirit doesn't grow old. There is no time in that realm where your spirit lives. Your spirit lives in another realm. It's called the eternal realm, because it will live forever. In the eternal realm, there is no element of time. There's no beginning and end. So that's where your spirit is. And I'm using that as a foundation because I want you to know that the time you have here on earth is a very, very short time given to you by God, through which you determine how you live eternally. And so that becomes very, very important. That when you forget that it is a life hereafter, sometimes you squander. Here you are just a visitor, there you live forever. That's where you belong. You belong in the other world. Here you come, live here. That's why you want to live purposefully. So it's not so much the length of time you live, but how well you live that life. It's not so much how long you lived on earth. 70 years, 80 years. No. How well did you live? There are great leaders who lived a short time. One of the good examples is Jesus. Only 33 years he had finished his assignment. 33 years. He died at 33. And he says, it's finished. I've finished my assignment. There are others who lived. So there are others in the Bible who lived 900 years. And all they have is the beginning and the end. Dash, just a dash in between the birth and the death certificate. Can you imagine? All they can remember is that you had so many children. That's all. No more. You accomplished nothing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine when you leave and there is nothing really you left? Nothing you changed. So it helps us to live very purposefully, knowing that this is not my real life, and I must use this body while I'm still young, energetic. I must utilize it very well. I should not squander the life I have. Life, the definition of life is that the definition of time is the life that God has measured out to you in which you accomplish his will here on earth. That is the definition of time. The life that he had measured out to you to accomplish his will for you here on earth. So the way you spend time, you waste time, you waste life. You waste time, you waste life. Life. So every single day is life. If you are sluggish in your walking to tea, to going this, you're wasting life. Life. Every single day you're wasting life. That's why you want to use it very, very purposefully, so that you accomplish all that the Lord intended for you to live. Now let's go back to to the way we are made. So your spirit is the part that God communicates with. Because his spirit, your spirit, that's the conscience. That's where the conscience is. And I'm going to show you shortly where the conscience is. But then the conscience, which is in your spirit, communicates through your soul, your mind here. Now the soul looks like this. The soul has the mind that is listening to me now, the emotions where you react, laughing, crying, excitement, all is here in the emotion. And then the will. We talked about the independent will in the last session. Do you remember? This will is very, very important. So, this is how your soul is made. The part that is listening to the discussion here is mainly this what? Mind. This is a very, very important part in you because you know what we call the mindset change. Every single thing you hear keeps changing you. You are transformed by the renewing of your mind. As you listen, your values, your what. So this mind here, that is what we call the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. There is a part in you, a part in that mind. The part which is listening now is the conscious mind when you are awake. If you repeat that thing continually, and especially if your emotions are involved, it gets into the downer part which is called the subconscious mind. That is the part where especially your dreams come from. If something threatened you in the day, you wake up in the night or you dream it or like that. I will not get into that so much. I wanted you to see the difference, especially because we are going to spend a little bit more time on the conscience. But your change, your transformation, specifically starts here, affects your emotions and then your will. For example, let me put it this way. You're walking on the streets of Kampala. This fast man knocks you. The part in you which reacts, because somebody has knocked you, the part which reacts is called the what? The emotion. You want to hit him. Now, the part in which you quickly react is the emotion. But your mind says, no, maybe he didn't see you. The emotion is saying, no, tandaba. The mind says, no, please, you can't. All that happens in a split second. And meanwhile, the will is listening, and the will decides, no, just leave it. Just be quiet. Just walk away. All that has happened in a very, very short time. That debate has taken place in a what? A split of a very, very short time. The emotion reacted. The mind said, no, please. The will decides. The will decides, just keep quiet. Your colleague in the meeting, in the class, does something, and you you gave somebody your money, and he has not paid you, says, now, the part in you that is reacting is the emotion. That is the emotion. Now, that is the part in the emotion. Now, the reasoning part is the mind. They say, no, please, you can't do that. Now, the will finally decides, okay, let me keep quiet. Let me leave it. Somebody comes and makes a bad comment. Now, your emotion immediately wants to hit back. The will says, now people who are called emotional are the ones who react before they think. So after they have reacted, say, oh, that kind of thing. You know, their emotions take them over before they think. Now, the more you change and grow and get learned and get educated, you learn how to handle your soul, your mind, your emotion, your will. There are certain things you can no longer do. Even if your body wants to eat, it passes here. So when, for example, when the devil came and tempted Eve, it was through what? The Bible says it darkened her mind, confused her, deceived her. And she was deceived and ate. So meaning, came through here to the will and she ate. Adam wasn't deceived. He was very clear what he was doing. But this was his bride. They had just gotten married. So he just gave in to the emotions of Allah. And so his temptation came through here to the will. It always ends here, the will, your will, what you decide to do. And then he gave in and committed the sin. So all of us, in all that you do, this is a very important discussion on how. Ask your neighbor, where does the devil pass most of the time with you? Does he pass this side, this side? Which side does he pass with you? Where does he pass? Atera kuyita luyiwa. Emotion. Okay. Yours is go through emotion. Omala kuyomba no jukira nti ovumye. Okay. That's right. Okay. Now let's go to this part. Now this is the part where we are mainly dealing with. Don't mind about so much the words, but this is how your spirit is made. So you have a part which is called the intuition, you have what you call the communion, and you have what they call the conscience. The conscience is the one which we are going to deal with. But let me mention something about these two. The intuition is like the antenna. Wanotewali network, linya kuchiswa. That is the antenna, the intuition. The intuition is the part that receives from God. That is the intuition. The communion is the part where you worship God. This intuition is like from God. Communion is to God, that is worship. Conscience is the part of you, the part where God communicates and says, this is right, this is wrong. So when we say, live by your conscience, we are talking about this particular part here. The conscience. Are you people at the back able to see this? Are you able to see? Very good. So I'm going to therefore spend a little bit more time. I'll not explain so much the others. Maybe let me mention something. Each one of these affects the other. If your conscience is always violated, you are violating your what? Your conscience. It loses the sensitivity. And the loss of sensitivity will affect the other two. The communion and the what? The intuition. Now let me start and end it at that. First go through the other part, and then I'll come back to that towards the end. But at least now, the words are clear. You know what conscience is. What is the conscience? Right and wrong. What is communion? I can't hear you. What worship? What is communion? And intuition? Somebody sits in the taxi and feels uneasy and says, I don't feel like I should go in this taxi. Let me go in the next one. So sits in the next taxi, leaves the other one goes ahead, and as they go to Mbale, they find the taxi where he was sitting has had an accident in Bujiri. In Niganga. So how did he know? Something inside him. That's what we call something is the intuition. That something is ekintu ne kingamba. Now de ekintu nga kingamba. Akuliranye muganti ekintu ekyo ekikugamba ekyo. Mugambe ekyo ekintu ekyo ekikugamba. Okay. Now in Uganda we have a word for that. We call it olumanyo. Have you heard of that? Yes. Anybody has heard of the word olumanyo? So when somebody is going to have danger, they have something in them. Like in Uganda, if somebody agenda kufa, somebody is going to die that day. Afuna chebaita ekyebikiro. Mwakiwulako ekyebikiro? Akera kumachanga ali. And in the afternoon, he has an accident or he's shot or something happens. Have you heard of that? So echebikiro is something in them telling them, that is from the intuition, olumanyo, that there is danger ahead of you. Because your spirit knows what your mind does not know. So your spirit knows the future. But your mind can't interpret, can't understand it. You are seated in the taxi, your spirit is telling you there is a problem with this taxi, so you leave it and you move into the next what? Taxi. So your spirit knows there is danger, but you can't explain it. Or somebody brings a bad deal ng'olaba efuna kiralu. Oteekawo miliyoni 2 n'ofuna meka 5 ng'olabira ddala ekola. Aha. But something said, no, be careful. Have you anybody who has ever felt that? Yeah? Where did you get it? Olumanyo, intuition. Now let me tell you something. If you constantly violate your conscience, you lose that part of you. It is God who gave you that part to warn you of danger, but also to prevent you from making mistakes, so that you don't buy air. You buy land and you buy what? Air. You find it. So there was something all along shouting, but you could not hear it. Because all along it kept shouting, Zayo balance, no Ghana, Zayo balance, no Ghana, Zayo balance. So it lost its voice. The voice kept decreasing. By the time you get into this road deal, it kept shouting, but now you violated this so many times that it has lost what? Sensitivity. Do you understand that? So every time you violate your conscience, that voice, which used to be loud, grows smaller and smaller, 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 because you constantly keep violating it. It's no longer sure way of protection as God had intended. This is for everybody, irrespective of which religion or what. It's in every human being. There is a part of God in you which warns you of danger, warns you of a bad deal. Somebody is bringing a bad deal and said, no. Sometimes wives are more sensitive than what? Men. Some of you are not yet married, but our wives sometimes come and, you're married? Hey, I didn't know. Okay, I thought you were still students, but maybe. Okay, so the wife will say, your friend, that friend of yours, he hasn't done anything to me, but I feel something is wrong with that. What? That friend of yours. And sure enough, after 3-4 years, you realize actually what she was saying was what? Right. This guy ended up proving he was actually wrong. All along, he was coming for a wrong reason. Have you heard of that in your family? Your father, your mother, or something like that? Normally, wives walk by their right brain and men walk by their left brain. I'm not going to that, but you know that they are talking about the intuition. They are referring to the intuition. They are more intuitive. The women are more intuitive. And sometimes they also have a suspicion so much unnecessarily, but there is always... and sometimes, every good thing can be misused, can be stretched on the negative side. But there is a good side to it. But then they can overdo it. But at the same time, they're more intuitive than what? Than men. Men just work by reasoning and what, and which is also good. But you can over-reason and then lose the intuition. The women can become over-suspicious, that they have a gift of suspicion. They keep suspecting. Now, the balance is the right thing. Okay? So, now you understand the intuition, you understand the communion. Communion is the part in you which worships God. So you are in a church service, everybody is worshiping and lost, and for you, you're just saying, for you are so dry that you don't even know what is going on. Have you seen such people? So because you don't feel anything, you don't sense anything, your communion is so dry that it cannot sense God. Even when the Holy Spirit comes in the service for you, you don't sense him. Others are worshiping you on WhatsApp. You're checking any message. Because you're so dry, you feel this whole service go through and you don't feel any presence of God. Have you felt that before in a church service? Yes, that is referring to the communion. It's the part of you which senses God. When the Lord shows up in a service, in what? The communion in you is the part which senses the presence of God, so that it does not pass over you. When they are singing, Lord, as your spirit moves, don't pass over me. I'm here. Touch me, Lord. That's the part which gets touched is the communion. This is what happens when you constantly violate your conscience. Can you pinch your palm like this? How about this part here? Here, below the arm. Which one is more sensitive? You see? You see how sensitive it is? Because it kept tender. Your conscience should be kept like that. Should be kept what? Tender, very tender. So that it can constantly warn you when there is danger, can warn you about wrong people, and to keep that conscience tender is what we are talking about now. If you violate it, it becomes like this. You say, give me 5, and somebody hits like, you say he didn't feel anything, and for you feel like fire. Because this part has lost its what? Sensitivity. So when you violate your conscience constantly, it gets what we say, it gets seared. Seared in Luganda, okuguba. Have you heard of that word? Okuguba. How do you call it in Runyankole? Okugawa. How are we about to Rusoga? Runyankole is what? Okusiga? Okusibuka. And Rugisu? And Rugisu? Okwasa? Okay. At least since you understand the word. Okuguba. Inu iteso? What does it say? Amazike? Amachi? Amasike. That is iteso. Oh, so you have very good. So I want you to look for that word because it's a very, very important word. And I'm going to tell you why it's important for you to understand that word. Because much of the corruption we have in this country is because of okuguba. People's conscience has what? When people first start to take bribes, they are scared. They are even scared of taking the money. They are shaking. Somebody was brought the bribe, take it. And the one as leaves, you're really shaking. You feel so bad because your conscience is shouting so much. You can't even the money, you get it, but you leave it in the office. You go home, but you can't sleep because your conscience is what? Is shouting and shouting and shouting. But later on in the morning, you get the guts, you use the money. Now the next time you get the bribe, the shaking is not like the other time. Now you gained somewhat because you silenced the voice. Stop. Sentence, imagine, now, so your conscience finally keeps shouting for a few days till the voice what? Dies. Then after 2 weeks, you get another what? Another bribe. This time you don't shake. This time you just look around that nobody has seen. You cover that time. You even go with the money home, and you have it in the car, and the voice is now less than the previous one. The third time, lower. The fourth, the fifth. Now it becomes the what? The order. The MPs who first go to Parliament, the first time for them to take a bribe is so difficult because they are not used to what? They are fresh from university. They have not been cheating. They have been upright. They were getting pocket money from their parents, and that's all they were budgeting on. They were living in their means. Now he's sitting with 15 other members of the committee, and he gets the what? The bribe. At first, he almost refuses because he feels, for the others, they're so used. For him, he feels like, you people, you're doing this so open, and you can't even hide it. Now, for him, it's still the voice is still what? Shouting. And for the others, they have been doing it. This is the 10th time. So for them, they are used. And for him, it's so uneasy. the first time, the second time, the third time. So do you see how corruption grows? Maybe that one is far from you. Let me use a young lady. The first time the boy is saying, you are the only bean in my soup. Yeah, so she's now. So now he's falling, and then you know those words, eh? The only mosquito in my net. Which other one? Patrick, give me some more of that. of that stuff. Only mosquito in my net. Which other one? You are the only fish in Lake Victoria. Mumbule mukozesa. The ones that you are using to really get these sisters off balance. Young men, tell me what you are using to get these sisters off balance. You are only up of my eye. Mweleta manyachi. Okay. So when she has listened to so many of those words, at first she's strong. For the first few months, you bring those words. By the time you get those words, she's really broken, very broken now. And more words, they are hitting. Remember where are they hitting? They are hitting here. Let me show you where the men keep hitting. Where do they hit? The what? Okay. Let's demonstrate it with these two. Especially. Mbalonzera kwambala biwalinga nga. Now, when you speak words, I want you to show how strong you are. You try to say something by knocking on her door. Now you're knocking at the door of her heart, of her emotion. Knock again. First show that you are strong. So he knocks and you don't respond. First time. When now you say mango. The first time you don't respond. The first time you just remain in your. So for you, you keep hitting again and again until she responds. Oraba. You see? Now she's. Where is the door? The what? The emotions. You understand that? The emotions is where the hitting is, the knocking. The knocking is here in order to win the what? The will. All along, she exercises her independent will to say no. And by so doing, she's working by her conviction. The conviction is in the mind. Okay? But when he persistently speaks words, now you speak those words. You are the only, now you say them. You are the only fish. Kati yogera, you speak to him. Tomutya. Abasajja tebatya.
Do you know that?
You are the only?
Do you know that you are the...
Yogera nnyo bawule.
Do you know that you are the love next to my
We beg your pardon.
Do you know that you are the love next to my parents?
Olabye, she's resisting. Continue. You don't give up. Keep saying.
And I already promised them. I promised them that you are here and they know you in their souls.
The what?
We have one.
They have what?
Another.
Okay.
It's fantabulous. So fantabulous.
Oneka fulu. Yes. Ale mutandike. Hey. Oh, okay. He wants to learn, okay? Okay.
Hello, soulmate. You look like the daughter of Angel Gabriel. You are so fascinating, so beautiful. You are so glittering. You are so appleful. I love you hilariously. Please, romanticize my heart. Much obliged and humbled.
Olabe bwamuggyemu enseko. Now, bwamuggyemu enseko kitegeeza he has touched what? Emotions. All along the emotions were hard and that. By the time he finishes those words, there is no more spirit in her. She's now, Now, all the temptations start in the soul. You understand that? They start in the what? The soul here, by impacting the emotions, flirting with your mind, and finally get to your what? To your will. Then your will gives in. Now, when, for example, if a young girl, a lady, she has kept herself pure, but now the words, the bombardment of such words, daughter of Angel Gabriel. Gabriel, I've only read what I'm like him. I'm like his daughter. And then he adds, now you're like Angel Michael. Now that emotionally starts to wear down constantly, gets to her emotions, and then finally her will, and she gives in. When she gives in, they go somewhere in the hotel or anywhere. She gives her body. The conscious all along is the spirit inside. Remember, all that has been happening in the soul. But when she gives in her body, the conscience starts to shout, don't go there. You can't go with him in that dark place. You can't do that. You will not be able to stand the temptation. It is shouting, woo! Meanwhile, hold her with the hand and ask you keep walking. Hold her with the hand. The hand here. Now the conscience is shouting, stop, don't, stop, don't. Now, while the conscience is shouting, she has no will left to withstand the temptation. Do you understand that? Now she has given in because the will has been weakened by the words, by the bombardment of the words. She knows what she's doing is wrong, and she's going with him in a dark place, and finally she gives her what? Her body. While they are starting opening the dress, and the conscience is, and she stops a little bit. The conscience stops. Then she continues, conscience, please, don't. And she just continues on. So that's how that's what the conscience has been doing. And then finally, but then she cannot rest. The whole night she's disturbed, the whole week. But then she's saying, after all, I'm not the only one. Then the conscience is silenced. Then the next time, then the third time, after time, then she no longer has that voice. Because she was violated, silenced, and then from that time it loses its. So that's what happens in any temptation that we get into. Thank you very much. Mbakubire mungalo. Now, anybody who has gone through that not this particular experience I'm talking about, but you remember where your conscience shouted and you violated it. Do you remember? Do you remember? Put up your hand and then I see. Thank you very much for being honest. The conscience was all along shouting. The conscience was all along shouting and telling you what you're going to do is bad, what you're going to do is wrong, but you still did what? Now, when you do that thing the second time, the voice is not as loud. The third time is not as loud. The third, the fourth, the fifth. After a while, your conscience gets sedated. Write the word sedated. Sedated is what you doctors do when you are going to operate somebody. To sedate. Anybody who is doing medicine? Who is, You're doing medicine. Even what? Any other? So when you're going to operate, you sedate people. You apply what? Chloroform? They use different anesthetics. So what it does, all the senses are there. The 5 senses are there, but they cease to do what? So for example, the person is there, is not dead. The eyes are there, but they don't see. Isn't it? The body does not feel the feeling. That feeling is one of the 5 senses. Hearing, doesn't hear. Taste, can't. So the human being is there, but once sedated, your senses are not operational. So that's what happens when your conscience is violated time and time again. It is there, but it has been sedated. Sedated conscience is the reason for rampant corruption. Can you write that down? When the conscience of the society is sedated, then corruption flourishes. When the conscience of the society is sedated, the conscience is there, but it's as good as dead. Sedated conscience is the reason for the proliferation of corruption. People still have their conscience, but they don't live by them because they have violated that conscience. They have drowned the voice. They no longer follow the voice or listen to the voice of the conscience. They silence it, and then they continue. So when a girl starts like that, then she'll start one man after another, and then sooner her life is like that. That's when HIV and AIDS come in, sickness, especially when they give them money tomorrow, the other day, they start to change, the lifestyle changes, the walking changes, the style changes. They look at what they are getting, the benefits, without thinking about the effect on their own lives. And that's how people's lives change. The same with corruption. The same way this girl is changing now, she'll come back with another dress, with another she's changing, and people are admiring. Kumbe, she has given in her most treasured possession. Her birthright has been sold at the altar of convenience or money. This guy, the sugar, what was his name? The one who came here and spoke powerful words? Atwine? Abine. Hey, Abine is a very big guy in town. He has a lot of money, and by the time he says she's crying, we're going to get one. Don't worry, 5 million. Okay. Now the conscience is the one which is going her to cry, and Abine is answering with money. He says, don't worry, you're not the first. Don't worry, we can handle that. Now, fortunately, she didn't conceive, but now the life changes. She's changing the dresses every day. And now that helps in silencing the voice. After all, you got dress, you have paid for the tuition, so you have all these other benefits to answer the accusation of your conscience. So much that the next time it's much easier to do the same thing, repeat it the next time because of the money aspect or the other negative, which looks like good benefits, yet negatively impacting on your personality from that moment onwards. That's how corruption takes over society, sedating the conscience of society, sedating the conscience of a person. When you compromise in one area, that compromise will overflow in many other areas, financially, even when you get in marriage. That's what will happen. After all, it's a small thing. And then the next time, then with your job. So corruption enters in one area and then gets inroads in other areas. This is why this conscience becomes very, very important. One compromise will lead to another compromise, will lead to another compromise, will lead to another compromise. It will not, the devil, when you allow him in the sitting room, Satan does not remain in the sitting room when you allow him in your house. He'll go to the kitchen, he'll go to the bathroom, he'll find you in the bedroom, he'll go to every other room. So you can't keep him in the pantry, no. Go into other areas of life. That's why it is important for you at this time to make a stand and say, no, for me, while others compromise, I will not. I will not compromise. I'll keep my principles. I'll keep my integrity. I'll keep in principle. Because sooner or later, if you open a door, it will be negative spiral continuing. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay? Now, let me give it a theological or philosophical background for you, because you people are going to teach this. Are you going to teach? You are aware that in the Emerging Leaders program, we are counting on you to teach this to the rest. That's why we're going to give you these notes. Our hope is that once we have invested in you long enough, you have asked questions, you've discussed them, you'll be teaching. You'll be getting a team of people and you start to teach them. And by the way, the more you teach it, the more you realize I need to live by it. So that, because when you preach something you're not living, you are the worst hypocrite. So, we are going to learn this, you're going to understand it, you're going to teach it. How many are going to teach it? Okay, so we are counting on you. You're going to teach it, and we are going to all the other universities. So we'll be inviting you. At first time, maybe we can go with you. I say one session, you do another. I say, Honorable, Your Excellency, come. I'll start on this, you cover conscience, I'll start integrity. So you start like that. You start you off. And after that, you take off. You go all over the country and you influence all the youth in this country. Are you ready to do that? That's our hope. That's the purpose of this. That's why we are giving you more time. Because after we've got it, we want to really facilitate you to take it all over the country, that we raise a great leadership team in this country. Young men and women of integrity. Amen? Are you ready to be that? Are you one of those? Are you going to be one of those? Yes. Okay. And for you, you will present it even much better, because you have, for me, I don't even know the words you use. You can imagine today, I only know those two. You are the only bean in my soup. You are the only, which one was the fish in? Hey. But you can see how Baine came here and he has a whole list of them. And for you, you know the one which especially touched you and broke your heart. They are the ones you'll use. And you'll even give living examples about yourself. And the students will be so happy because they are... When I speak, but when for you stand up, they say, oh, my guy, you get up. But when Patrick is speaking and me, you compare, you see. For him, he's on the cutting edge. Nefe kati tuli mu departure lounge, muli mu arrival lounge, fe tuli mu departure sa. Abakadda. You understand that? For you, when you come to present it, it will be so live, be so real, because you are living in their very generation, and you'll be giving examples in which exactly where these people are living, what they're experiencing. You know them, and some of them you've been with them, and so it will be much, much better. You present it much better. So you need to understand the concepts. That's why I want to give you the principle and the philosophy behind. Then you can put it in the language they can understand. Now, let's read this together. In the Christian faith, we believe that God has written. How many has God written? To do what? Do you know those books? Which are the 3 books God has written? The first, the book of God's words. It's called what? The second book? What is that? Nature, history, and culture. And then he has written a third book. The book of God is within us. It's called what? Conscience. Now, this philosophy here changed Europe 500 years ago. During the Reformation, this truth came out very, very clearly when they started to teach that God has written not just one book, the book of his words, but he has written a second book. That's the book of his works. In botany, you are studying the book of his works. You're studying how trees are created. In biology, you're looking at the anatomy of man. That is God's book. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your heart, your brain, all the 12 systems of the body. Circulatory system, the skeletal system, integumentary system. When you study that, you are studying the book of God's works. It's God who created human being. That is another book. So in science, you are studying the book of his works. That is nature, but also how God has worked in history, in the human race, and then our cultures. So that is the second book. The second book is the book of his works. The first book is the book of his words. The second book is the book of his works. That's what you are studying most of the time in class. When you're studying geography, how rocks sedimented, the rocks, the earthquakes, you are studying the book of his works. How rocks are made, soils are made. That is the second book, the book of... So Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and he told them, you do err. The reason you are making mistakes, you Pharisees, because you don't know both books. You do err not knowing the scriptures, that is the book of his words, nor the works of God. So he was telling them, you should know both. You should know both books and study them. He said, you know how to tell the sky it's going to rain. That is what anatomy. When you're studying, what do we call it? Studying weather. Forecasting is which study is that? Meteorology. Yes, you know meteorology. You study meteorology, you know when it's going to rain, when it's going to be. How come you can't tell? So Jesus was referring to meteorology, and he was referring to the book of his word. Now, the third book is what the people don't explain a lot, because it is the third book. This third book here, that is written within you, in every individual human being. That book should also be studied. During the Reformation 500 years ago, they decided that we should study all the 3 books. All of them are important. We studied the book of his words. We studied the book of his works. That is how science took on a new level. They read Psalms 111 verse 2, which says, majestic are the works of the Lord. Those who delight in them study them. Those who delight in the works of the Lord study them. So they started to study the works of the Lord. And the first laboratory in Cavendish in Cambridge was started in 1600. Because they delighted in the second book, they started to study it. That laboratory was set, so the scientific revolution started there. So that's the study of the second book. Science and all those studies are the study of the second book. When Isaac Newton, how many of you are physicists and chemists, and how many of you study Newton? Newton's laws of motion. Are you aware that Newton was a believer? Are you aware of that? Yes. Newton was a very, very staunch believer. He wrote more about the Bible than science. They never tell you about that. But Newton was a very, very, very staunch believer. He discovered all those laws of dynamics, laws of calculus, four laws of thermodynamics, all those laws. So they said, how did you come up with all these? He said, because I studied all the 3 books. That was his answer. He said, I studied all the 3 books of God. That's how I excel in the study of the second book. But I studied even the other 2. I studied the Bible. He wrote a commentary on the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. Newton. Anybody who has written a commentary here on a Bible? He wrote a commentary on the book of Daniel, and he wrote a commentary on the book of Revelation. That is Isaac Newton, scientist. That is Isaac Newton. He wrote a whole commentary, and many other books he had started on the book of John. So he was a student of the Bible. But then he said, because I studied these 2 books, the Bible, and I obey my conscience, I am able to connect to God. And he starts to reveal to me things that I have never heard of. That's how I come up with all these inventions. Are you ready to be like that? Any Isaac Newton here? Anybody who is aspiring to be like that? You studied all the 3 books. Studied the book of his words. Studied the book of his reason within. Allow your conscience. Guard your conscience. Keep it sensitive. Don't violate it. Then you become a serious scientist. You'll invent things people have never heard of, because God will start to download. Write that down. The Lord will start to download his truth when you study all the 3 books. So